This lesson is focusing on square and square roots. Square numbers are numbers that can be arranged in a square. So let's have a look at the first square number. So the first square number, which is 1, is equal to 1 times 1, which is our square here. So we have 1 squared is equal to 1. Looking at our second square number, which is 4, this is equal to 2 times 2. So we can rewrite that as 2 squared is equal to 4. Our third squared number is 9 is equal to 3 times 3. So we can rewrite this as 3 squared equals 9. If this pattern is continued, any square number can be found by multiplying the position of the square number by itself. So having a look at our times table, our multiplication table, we can see that 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, and so on down the diagonal. So these are our perfect square numbers. So this is known as squaring a number, and it can be written with an index of 2. So let's have a look at an example. So here we have find the square numbers between 90 and 150. Using your knowledge of your times tables to find the first square numbers after 90, we can say that 10 squared, which is equal to 10 times 10, is equal to 100. So that will be our first number. So now we want to find the square numbers which come after this, but before 150. So we can continue. 11 squared is equal to 11 times 11, which is equal to 121. Our next number would be 12 squared, which is equal to 12 times 12, equals 144. Continuing on, we have 13 squared, which is equal to 13 times 13, which is equal to 169. So this answer here is too big and won't be included. So now we can write out our answer. So the square numbers between 90 and 150 are 100, 121, and 144. So looking at our second example, we have write the two whole square numbers between which 5.7 squared will lie. So our first step is to write the whole numbers either side of 5.7. So 5.7 is between 5 and 6. Our second step is to consider the square of each whole number. So 5.7 squared is between 5 squared and 6 squared. So now we want to simplify these out. So 5.7 squared is between 5 squared is 25 and 6 squared is 36. Now that we understand square numbers, let's move on to square roots. Evaluating the square root of a number is the opposite of squaring a number. So here, if we have 4 squared, we get 16. If we have the square root of 16, so following our arrow, 16, the square root, we get 4. The square root symbol is represented by this symbol here. So let's write this out. So if we had 4 squared equals 16, we mean that 4 multiplied by itself is equal to 16. So going the opposite way, the opposite of this is to say that the square root of 16 is equal to 4. And we write this out as the square root of 16 is equal to 4. So this is an example of squared, and this is an example of the square root. To find the square roots of larger numbers, it helps to break the number up as a product of 2 smaller square roots with which we are more familiar with. So let's have a look at this example. The square root of 900. Being familiar with our squared numbers, I know that I can rewrite this as the square root of 9 times the square root of 100. So the square root of 9 is equal to 3, multiplied by the square root of 100, which equals to 10. So the square root of 900 is equal to 30. So we have a couple more examples. So here, what is the square root of 49? Looking at our table, the square root of 49 is 7 times 7. So our answer is 7. The square root of 3,600, we can split this up into the square root of 36 times the square root of 100. This makes it a lot easier for us because we know the square root of 36 is 6 and we know the square root of 100 is 10. So the square root of 3,600 is 60. Our final example says, between which 2 numbers will the square root of 74 lie? So first off, we want to write out the square numbers either side of 74. So 74 is between, for those that aren't familiar with their times table, we can have a look. So 74 is somewhere in between here, 64 and 81. So rewriting this out as the square root of 74 is between the square root of 64 and the square root of 81. And now we can just simplify this. So the square root of 74 is between 8 and 9. It is easy to work out the square root of a perfect square, as the answer is always a whole number. It gets really difficult to work out other square roots. So looking at this example, the square root of 74, we know it's not one of our perfect squares. So this answer is going to be a decimal. So if you were to type this into your calculator, you would get 8.6 and then a lot of decimals that follow. These solutions can be rounded to a few decimal places. So I'm going to round it to 2 decimal places. So therefore, the square root of 74 is approximately equal to 8.60. Thank you for watching.